Welcome to another edition of the CS Podcast presented by the NFL Draft Bible and NUC Sports. Be sure to check out this podcast as well as all the other work that's published there each and every day at NFLDraftBible.com and NUCSports.com. Once again, I'm your guys' host, Chris Shanafelt, and on today's show, we'll be focusing on my hometown, Chicago Bears. Last season, this was one of the worst teams in the NFL, and after finishing 5-11, the Bears higher-ups decided to part ways with general manager Phil Emery and head coach Mark Trestman and his coaching staff, and decided to bring in John Fox and what looks to be a very good coaching staff that includes Adam Gase and Vic Fangio. On this show, I'll be joined by Aaron Leming, who writes for BearReport.com. We'll be talking about all the changes that this team is going through, starting with the coaching changes to player departures such as Brandon Marshall, who was traded to the New York Jets. We'll talk about if this is the year where we can see things begin to look a little brighter for the defense, which has just been awful the last couple of years, as they're now switching to a 3-4 defense for the first time in team history with arguably the top defensive coordinator in the NFL in Vic Fangio. And, of course, towards the end of the conversation with Aaron, we'll talk about team expectations. What should we expect out of the 2015 Chicago Bears? Can we expect a better team than last year's 5-11 team? We'll answer that. I'll also be joined by Chicago Bears defensive end turned outside linebacker David Bass, who's entering his third year in the NFL, his third year with the Chicago Bears. And although it's early, it sounds as if that this new coaching staff has really liked what they've seen out of Bass. We'll talk about the transition he's making to the new defense and the outside linebacker position, how much this team will miss the leadership of guys like Lance Briggs and Peanut Tillman. And David has a football camp going on July 17th and 18th at St. Joseph's High School in Westchester, Illinois from 10 to 2 p.m., presented by the Palacios Foundation and Chicago United Ventures, that we'll be spending some time talking about as well. Definitely more than happy to talk about that. Get these guys some publicity for the great things they're doing in the community. Before we get to these interviews, be sure to follow me on Twitter at Chris Shanafelt, and be sure to check out this podcast as well as some of my other work at NFLDraftBible.com, NUCSports.com, YouTube.com/ChristianRE722, and ChristianShanafelt.wordpress.com. Now, here's my interview with Aaron Leming from BearReport.com. You guys are listening to the CS Podcast presented by the NFL Draft Bible and NUCSports.com. I'm your host, Chris Shanafelt, and to discuss the offseason and team expectations for the 2015 Chicago Bears, it's a pleasure to now be joined by Aaron Leming from BearReport.com. He's at Aaron Leming NFL on Twitter. Thanks for taking some time today, Aaron, and let's go ahead and start off by talking about this new coaching staff. Obviously, after a horrendous 2014 season going 5-11, the Bears cut ties with Mark Trestman and his staff. They've now brought in John Fox, who seems to be bringing in two of the top coordinators in the NFL, and Adam Gase, who will be working with the offense, and Vic Fangio, who will be working with the defense. Looking at this experienced coaching staff and comparing them to last year's Bears coaching staff, how much of an upgrade are we talking?
Oh, well, looking at it, I mean, it's head and shoulders above. I mean, you have a guy in John Fox who apparently Denver fans aren't too big of a fan of, but when you really look at it, the guy comes in and he wins. He turns teams around, and maybe he isn't the final answer for the next 10 years, but it's hard to not look at the staff that he brings. You know, you got Vic Fangio, who's arguably, the top defensive coordinator in the league, and if not, top 3, top 5. And Adam Gase, who is a great offensive mind, who's done good things in Denver's in his time, so he's going to come over. So, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, you just have a much more established coaching staff, which is really going to help, because that's one thing that Bears really liked last year was leadership.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Aaron, you were actually the one who broke the news about Ryan Pace becoming the general manager of the Chicago Bears. What was it about Pace that the Bears were sold on to give him his first general manager gig?
Well, basically, I was told going into this whole entire thing that it looked like Chris Ballard was going to be the guy. He came in, he interviewed. They had, I think it was Lake Dawson, and then they had the guy from the Texans. I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. That had interviewed before, and then the next day they brought in Chris Ballard and Ryan Pace. And Ryan Pace was kind of one of those guys. He was an up-and-comer. He was on Corsi's list. So they brought him in and interviewed him, and I mean, he just absolutely kicked down the door, and that was, word for word exactly what I was told. He came in, he kicked down the door. He sat in, he came in, sat down, and really just commanded the attention the whole entire room for the interview. And from what I was told, he basically had a plan for everything down to the equipment managers. And it was just so overwhelming and so detailed that, you know, it took most of the night after that before they announced the decision. I think I was told about 1 o'clock in the morning that he was going to be the guy. But before that, I mean, they really had a big decision to make. So, you know, it took a lot. And I think that says volumes about Ryan Pace and how prepared he was coming in. It was obvious that, I mean, he had a game plan going in the off season, you know, even with the hires of the coaching staff and down to all the players that he signed. I mean, you see a lot of one-year deals, a lot of prove it. You know, it's almost kind of like a tryout year with upside. So, and you can definitely see that there's a plan in place, much more than Phil Emery, and it's very noticeable.
Now, looking at the history of the Chicago Bears, it's kind of unusual to see the Bears hire an experienced head coach like they did with John Fox, who, of course, took over a 1-15 Panthers team back in 2002. In a couple of years, took them to a Super Bowl. He also did the same in Denver by taking over a 4-12 team, made a playoff appearance with Tim Tebow at the helm, and obviously, once Peyton Manning arrived, they were a much better team and made an appearance in the Super Bowl before getting destroyed by Seattle. Was John Fox the number one guy that the Bears were always targeting for the head coaching job, or was there another candidate that they were very interested in but ended up taking another job? I mean, was John Fox always the Bears' number one guy?
No, he wasn't. Gary Kubiak, when I was told, was the guy. You know, obviously he turned down the opportunity to even interview with not only the Bears, I can't remember what the other team was, but. So, you know, but John Fox is one of those guys that, they weren't really expecting to come available. And I think it speaks volumes just about, you know, the type of candidate that they even, you know, thought about. Because like you said before, I mean, it's not a normal Bears thing to do to, you know, bring in a guy that has head coaching experience. So, I mean, you look at John Fox and you see the things that he's done, and the biggest thing that I like, that I think a lot of Bears fans are going to like, is the fact that he makes changes. You know, Mark Trestman was a guy who, regardless of what was going on, what was going wrong, he was just basically happy to sit in there and do nothing about it except for benching Cutler as kind of a last stand. But you look at John Fox, and you see, even though, like you mentioned before with Tim Tebow, it's one of those things. I mean, he's not going to be afraid to make moves. He has a plan. He has leadership. So I think that's going to be a big thing for the Bears, especially with a team that is trending towards the younger side.
Writer for BearReport.com, Aaron Leming, joining the CS podcast presented by the NFL Draft Bible and NUCSports.com. And Aaron, kind of focusing on this offense really quickly. I mean, during his time in Denver, Adam Gase, he never really had a lead back. I mean, he always used a running back by committee. You know, he always gave the ball to the hot hand. I assume that we will see the Bears run the ball a lot more this year. At least it sounds like that's the plan. But Matt Forte, who although is in great shape, he's 29, almost 30 years old. They drafted Jeremy Langford in the 4th round of this year's draft, Kadeem Carey in the 4th round of last year's draft, and, of course, brought in Jacquizz Rodgers and Daniel Thomas through free agency. Should we expect Matt Forte's snap counts to be reduced? And if so, who do you think will be carrying the load when Forte isn't in?
Well, as far as Forte goes, I mean, yeah, like you said, he's getting up there in age. With Mark Trestman last year, he simply used Forte too much, and that's been a common trend with him lately. I don't think they're going to re-sign him after this year, but I do think you will see a reduced snap count, and not so much of trying to keep him. Trying to keep him fresh, but I don't think it's going to be a conservation thing. It's going to be more of, like you mentioned, John Fox has always gone with committee type running back, and that's what Adam Gase is used to. I don't think you'll see, quite the extent that you saw in Denver, but it'll definitely start trending that way. I think, Forte is going to be here another year. He's still got a lot to offer. Adam Gase is going to be able to work with, a very dynamic running back, which something he hasn't been able to do. So I do see a reduced snap count. As far as, backups go right now, I think it's going to have to be Jeremy Langford, at least for the time being. Kadeem Carey could step up, but they don't seem very comfortable with any of their backup running backs, especially Kadeem Carey. So it's going to be interesting. I think training camp's going to tell a lot. There's going to be quite a few position battles, but that's going to be one of the main ones that can kind of Matt Forte.
And we're less than 3 weeks away from the Chicago Bears training camp down in Bourbonnais. I'll be there. Definitely looking forward to that. Aaron, back in March, you reported that the 49ers put Colin Kaepernick on the trade market and that the Bears were rumored to be interested. Leading up to the draft, there was a lot of rumors about the Bears possibly trading up for the number 2 overall pick to select Marcus Mariota. It doesn't sound as if this coaching staff is sold on Cutler, and they really don't have any reason to be sold on him. How actively were the Bears trying to trade Cutler, and now that he will indeed be this team's quarterback this season, how confident are they that they can win with number 6 at the helm?
Well, oh man, that's an interesting topic. They're not sold. I think we saw that from day one with John Fox's press conference. I mean, he's not sold. I mean, the guy is, on the wrong side of 30 for one, coming off a pretty rough year, even though you look at his stats and he put up pretty good numbers minus the interceptions. But, ultimately when you have a guy that's being paid that much, just in this day and age, it's not easy to unload a quarterback and get much for him. So that was basically what happened. They explored the trade market to a certain extent. Unfortunately, contrary to popular belief, there really wasn't much of a market for him. They did try to make a move during draft day, as was reported by myself and quite a few other sources. But unfortunately, and going back to it, I mean, Tennessee was more willing to take a chance on an unproven guy like Mariota, not have to give up anything versus getting Cutler and having to take a chance on somebody else. So ultimately, moving forward, I mean, he has $10 million in guarantees next year, which doesn't really mean much because they're going to have some good cap space with getting some of these guys off the books. So it's going to be a make-or-break year for him. Personally, I think he's going to have a pretty good year, and I could see him coming back next year just because Adam Gase is going to take the pressure off him. I mean, he's not an elite quarterback, but he's also not a bad quarterback. You just got to limit his decision-making and ultimately put him in just put him in good positions, and running the ball more and running a more balanced offense really helped. Trestman, threw the ball 64% of the time last year. Adam Gase is close to 57%. And, that percentage may not look like a big amount, but when you start looking at it, it was close to 200 snaps. So I think that'll tremendously help him out. Getting a guy like Eddie Royal in the slot is also really going to help him out. And personally, I think not having Brandon Marshall there to target on a consistent basis is going to help him out, too. It's going to let him know who his reads but better and really find the open receiver.
You're kind of just strolling through the roster, mentioning Eddie Royal. You mentioned a few players there. One player that you didn't mention, and I'm not surprised at all, but this is a guy that his name was really heating up last year before he got injured in training camp, and that's Marquise Wilson. What can we expect out of him? I mean, I got to think he's battling for a roster spot. What are you expecting out of Marquise Wilson? Will he make this roster? Will he have any type of impact on this team this year?
Well, I've been a big fan of Wilson since he came out of college. I've been, pretty vocal about it. But realistically, he had the injury last year in training camp and didn't come back until the tail end of the year. Really didn't show that much. He's a big guy. He's a little bit on the skinny side, but he's got good length. And I mean, ultimately, his routes didn't look very good. He wasn't physically dominant like he should be, and missed some passes that he should have caught. So. Ultimately, I think it speaks a lot when you get rid of a guy like Brandon Marshall and you turn around and you grab a guy like Eddie Royal for the slot, and then you turn around and you draft Kevin White with your 7th overall pick. I think that says a lot about how they feel about him. I know there's been reports that the coaching staff likes him, and maybe to a certain extent. But at the same time, I mean, ultimately, he's going to be a number 4 receiver. And with that, I mean, he's probably going to be a number 6 option because you also have Marcellus Bennett and you also have Matt Forte, who's still going to be a receiving threat. So ultimately, I do think he will make the roster. I think he's still got some upside, and he's still under control for basically next to nothing as far as salary cap concern goes. So, I mean, you're going to have that good size. You're going to have a guy that can come off the bench. And as we've seen in the last few years, the Bears have had the best history of injuries. So, he could play a bigger role, but I don't expect much out of him this year.
All right, sounds great. Now, one final question about the offense, and then we'll focus a little bit on the defense. And that is, and you mentioned it, after trading Brandon Marshall to the New York Jets and drafting Kevin White 7th overall in the 2015 NFL Draft, how much of an impact should we expect White to have year one? And can Alshon Jeffrey be a legit number one wide receiver in the National Football League? I know there's a lot of questions about that.
Well, as far as Alshon Jeffrey, I can make that, and I can make that pretty simple. I personally think he can become a great number one. He doesn't have the top-end speed that some of these guys do, but neither does Brandon Marshall. Coming out of college, Jeffrey was known for his hands. The biggest thing with him was, keeping his weight down. Everybody had a tough year last year. Jeffrey battled some injuries. Cutler wasn't consistent. When you throw him the ball as much as they did, it gets pretty predictable. So I think he will step up this year, and I think he will get an extension when it's all said and done. So yeah, I'm expecting big things out of him. As far as Kevin White goes, it's tough because the last few years, and especially last year's draft class, you look at some of these guys, and it's kind of set up some unreal expectations for some fans. And it's really unfortunate because you got a guy like Kevin White who is a great talent, but he's also very raw at the same time. Realistically speaking, he is kind of a little bit of a one-year wonder, coming from the junior college and then into West Virginia, where he was there for 2 years. He really just started producing last year, and that's not a knock on him at all. He's got great physical ability. He's got everything you're going to want in a guy, but at the same time, it's not going to be as easy as some of the other receivers that have come out of the draft. You look at a Julio Jones, those kind of guys, and I don't think he's going to have the same kind of production. But at the same time, he's not going to need to because you have guys like Alshon Jeffrey, and you have guys like Eddie Royal, and, Martellus Bennett almost had 1,000 yards last year, and you got Matt Forte. So he's coming into a very ideal year. You look at the A.J. Green and Julio Jones. I made a comparison about that in an article not too long ago as far as expectations for Kevin White. And you really look at it, and, A.J. Green came in, and he really had nobody around him as far as receivers go, and he got a lot more targets, and he had more yards versus Julio Jones, who came in, and he had Harry Douglas there with him, and obviously Roddy White. So I think you can expect anywhere from 700-800 yards from him this year, maybe a few touchdowns, and probably 50-60 receptions is probably about right. He will start from day one, but at the same time, there's going to be some growing pains. He had a very limited route tree at West Virginia, as we've seen with guys like Stedman Bailey and Tavon Austin. So it's going to take some time. Missing out on some of the mini camps that he did and some of the OTAs has kind of hurt him a little bit. But, he's a smart guy, and they would have took him number 7 overall if they didn't think he was.
Aaron, I lied to you, my friend. This is the final question about the offense. My apologies. So you mentioned, the Bears. He won't. Kevin White won't necessarily need to have the type of impact like a Julio Jones or an A.J. Green had right away because they have weapons like a Matt Forte, Alshon Jeffrey, Eddie Royal, and you mentioned Martellus Bennett. Will Martellus Bennett be a Chicago Bear once the Chicago Bears open up the regular season in just a couple of months? There's been a lot of rumors about him as well. He has 2 more years left on his contract. He really wants a new contract. What's the deal with the black unicorn, they call him?
Well, as far as Martellus Bennett goes, I think he's going to be there week 1. Him and his brother are both outspoken people. I don't agree with a lot of the things that they say or the way that they handle things, but that's their business. And, when you get in the NFL, you try to make as much money as possible while you're playing because your career could end at any time. So ultimately he will be there, at least through this year. After that, I really have my doubts. It will really depend. There's really just not much coming up in free agency, and there's really not much as far as draft goes. So it's going to be one of those things. It's going to be kind of a touchy subject because he is starting to get up there close to 30 after the year's over. He's going to have 1 year left on his deal. I cannot see him showing up next year even through camp. So we'll have to see. Yeah, I think his number is going to go down a little bit just because the targets aren't going to be there, especially, Marshall not being there and hopefully the injuries not being there. I think you're going to see obviously more running, and you're going to see the ball spread out a little bit more, especially with Royal and everybody that they've added. So I think that could knock his value down a little bit. And ultimately, he is due for a little bit of a raise. I do agree with that. I think they could work on an extension 2 or 3 years, but at this time, you just don't know how Ryan Pace feels about it after the way things have been dealt with this offseason.
Aaron Leming. He writes for BearReport.com. He's a must-follow on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. He's joining the CS podcast, once again brought to you guys by the NFL Draft Bible and NUCSports.com. And Aaron, switching gears to the Bears' defense. I mean, this defense has just been disgustingly awful since Lovie Smith has left this team. And according to Brian Billick, this team now has the best defensive coordinator in the National Football League in Vic Fangio. It's certainly going to look much different than what Bears fans are used to seeing, since they'll be running now a 3-4 defense for the first time in team history. Many believe that the Bears they don't have enough pieces or the right pieces to have a dominant or even a middle of the pack type defense this year, running the 3-4. What do you think? I mean, I don't think that this defense could get much worse than it was, but can we see a big jump in the rankings for this Bears defense in 2015?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like you just touched on, one of the biggest additions of the offseason, if not the biggest, was Vic Fangio. I mean, absolutely steal of a hire, especially getting them, away from what looked like he was going to be close to signing with the Redskins. So that was huge. Going into the 3-4, I mean, a lot of people don't understand. It's not just going to be a one-year transition. It's going to be a 2-year transition. He is running a true two-gap 3-4 front. So, I mean, it's going to be a little bit of a transition. I mean, they have some pieces, but like I said, going back to what Ryan Pace has been doing this offseason, you're going to see a lot of tryout basis players. I mean, you got Mason Foster, then you add a guy, a good veteran like Antrell Roll. You have Ryan Mundy back there, and so, I mean, they've got some pieces. I just actually released an article today about top 5 sleepers for this year, and one of the biggest ones, and a lot of fans have heard a lot about it throughout these mini camps, has been David Bass, and if a guy like that can really step up and if he can become a factor as an outside linebacker, and especially the pass rusher, it's going to make things a lot easier because you're coming off of 2 huge injuries, 2 of the Bears' better pass rushers, and Lamar Houston and Willie Young, and on top of that, they're making this transition from defensive end to outside linebacker. So, I mean, ultimately, when you look at it, yeah, there's going to be a transition, but, I mean, there's just absolutely no way that things could get much worse than they were the last 2 years under Mel Tucker. There's, coming down to it, I mean, even fans could see that there's changes that need to be made, and they simply didn't make them. And you're not going to see that with Fangio. Fangio didn't get this kind of reputation from coaching the way that Tucker did. So ultimately, I think I could see them being, middle of the pack. Maybe that's a little optimistic. I do think they're going to have some pieces. Ego percent. I think the defensive line is going to be a lot better than people think it is. Some of the transitions are going to be interesting, but realistically, I mean, they're 2 or 3 players away from making a smooth transition and to really having a good solid defense this year and moving forward. So I think the arrow is definitely trending up.
Well, it's pretty funny that you mentioned David Batts. He'll actually be joining the same exact podcast in just a few minutes. So happy to hear that you think that David Batts could have an impact on this team next year, on this new 3-4 defense, adjusting to a new position at outside linebacker. And speaking of outside linebacker, what should we anticipate from Jared Allen this year as he's learning a new position at outside linebacker? Throughout his whole career, he's been a 4-3 defensive end. What should we anticipate out of Jared Allen?
Well, Jared Allen's a very interesting case. I mean, he's getting up there. He had, his worst year last year. But, it's been touched on a few times, but a lot of that can be contributed to him getting pneumonia. I mean, he dropped a ton of weight. I cannot believe he came back after just 1 week. So, I mean, realistically, yeah, he's moving to a new position, but at the same time, he's not the thickest of guys to begin with. He's pretty athletic. He's very instinctive. He seems to be transitioning very well into the outside linebacker role so far. Jeremy Schultz had reported during minicamp that he'd actually started taking away snaps from Sam Acho on the first team. Is really making a good transition, especially like I said, we touched on the injuries with the two defensive end going on to outside linebacker. So ultimately, I mean, he's going to have a chance to get in there and really do something. biggest thing with him is just keeping the snap count down. He is getting up there in age. He played a pretty good amount last year, and biggest thing's keeping him fresh. I think they're going to be able to rotate a lot of these guys, and it's something for fans to keep in mind too. The fact that just because it's going to be 3-4, it's a 3-4 base defense. Base defenses run about 40-45% of the time. The rest of the time is going to be in nickel sub packages. So a lot of this, you're going to still see some 4-3 fronts. I mean, Fangio runs what looks like a 4-3 front anyway. He's going a little bit out of his way here. But I think Allen's going to be in for a good season as long as they can keep snap down. I wouldn't be surprised to see him with another 10-sack year.
Well, that certainly says a lot, especially coming off of the season that he and this entire Bears defense just had last season. Now, Aaron, I know that the coaching staff is said to be high on Shea McClellan as well, and they really liked what they've seen out of him in minicamp. But again, it's just minicamp. Do you think that changing to this new defense can do wonders for Shea, and will this be his last year in Chicago?
Well, I'll be simple about it. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying anything about Shea McClellan. I mean, let's just be honest here. I mean, this is his third position in 3 years. I mean, the guy was put in the wrong position to begin with. Mentally that takes a toll. I mean, he's just simply failed. He has been taking all of the first team snaps. I think at Mike, according to Jeremy, alongside Christian Jones. But realistically, I mean, there's not much to really find out about a guy when they're sitting there in shorts with no pads on. So ultimately, yeah, the staff may be high on him right now, and I mean that's the reason he was drafted in the first round. I mean, he has good athleticism, but the instincts lack, and overall, I mean, he's just not a very good football player. So he could surprise, and this could be the switch that he's looking for. But ultimately, I think he's going to fade off in camp pretty fast. I mean, I do think he'll make the team, but ultimately, I mean, it says a lot when a team is willing to waive that fifth-year option. So ultimately, I don't think he'll be back next year. If he has a good year, then they may try to re-sign him. But I think he'll end up being a rotational guy at best this year and moving on next year.
Yeah, certainly a make it or break it year for Shea McClellan this year. Even if he makes it and has an impact, I mean, the team will still have to make a decision as to whether or not to bring him back here in Chicago. Now, last year, the Bears' big free agent signing was Lamar Houston, and he certainly did not live up to the hype before tearing his ACL after sacking Jimmy Garoppolo in a blowout loss to New England. I know that it sounds like he'll be making the switch to outside linebacker as well. Is that still the case, though, or now with Ray McDonald in the Bears' rearview mirror, can we see Houston line up somewhere on that D-line?
Well, and that's been an interesting topic of conversation lately for a lot of people, including myself. So ultimately, when Houston had his success in Oakland, he played a lot out of the wide nine as a defensive end, but out of a 2-point stance. I mean, not to say that he's not a better, or not a good player when he has his hand in the ground out of a 3-point stance, playing close to the line, anything like that. But ultimately, I think he's going to be a better outside linebacker. A lot of people will log on to NFL.com or go to ESPN, and it shows up as 300 pounds. But he did an interview last year saying that he was closer. I think he was right around 268 with his new training regimen. So, I mean, he's not quite as big as a lot of people think he is. Now, touching on that and thinking that he'll stay outside linebacker, one thing that will be big for the Bears this year is going to be the fact that Pernell McPhee can line up at multiple different positions. I mean, he can line up, obviously, at outside linebacker. He can line up at defensive end, as a 5-tech, as a 3-tech. I mean, he can play nose tackle. I mean, this is a big man we're talking about. We're talking about 6'4", close to 6'5". He's about 285. I mean, the guy, that's one of the biggest things that he did last year because of how many outside linebackers the Ravens had. I mean, this guy's going to be able to line up all over the field. So I've seen a lot of people talking about Houston going, sliding up to the line, playing a 5-tech position. Ultimately, I don't think he's big enough, and I don't think that's where it best suits him. But I do think they get a good rotation going with the outside linebackers. I definitely could see Pernell McPhee getting a lot of time at the 5-tech position. And he's going to be all over the place. They've already described him as a Swiss Army knife. But I do think Houston will stay mainly at outside linebacker.
BearReport.com's Aaron Leming joining the CS podcast. And Aaron, just a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. I really do appreciate your time, man. Are you surprised that Lance Briggs is still a free agent? I mean, I got to say, I would have thought that a team like Tampa Bay or even San Francisco would have snatched him up by now.
Yeah, he's going to be one of those value signings for a team, after they see an injury or two during training camp. Surprised me a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, it's almost kind of like an Urlacher type situation, and he's really lost a lot due to injury. Over the last few years, he's really just kind of gone downhill. Last year was not a good look for him at all. And ultimately, maybe it would be better since he is losing some of that speed to move him to an inside linebacker position. I know there was some talk about that in a 3-4 front about moving him inside. I'm with you. I do think San Francisco could use him. I'm not sure Tampa Bay really fit in Tampa Bay, especially with what they have over there for linebackers already. But I do think he may benefit from a switch to a 3-4 scheme, especially, like I said, he loses a little bit of speed, lost a little bit of athleticism. But he's still good instinctually. He still shows those flashes every once in a while, and he's still a pretty good player. I wouldn't be surprised if something goes down with the Bears and you see an injury or two, or players aren't performing like they need to. I wouldn't be surprised to see them give him a call, later on in camp.
And it certainly sounds like he wouldn't mind playing under John Fox either, from some comments that he put out there a few months ago. And of course, I only throw Tampa Bay out there for Lance Briggs because of Lovie Smith and the Tampa Bay Bears that he's running down there. Final question for you, Aaron. Some had the Bears going to the Super Bowl last year as they, quote-unquote, won the offseason, won free agency. They ended up going 5-11, fired general manager Phil Emery along with Mark Trestman and his staff. They traded Brandon Marshall not even 1 year after signing him to that extension. If you had to take a guess as to where you see this team finishing this season, it's an even tougher NFC North division, what would you predict their record to be?
Well, I'm actually just looking at that today. They got a tough schedule. They're playing the NFC West this year, and they're also playing the AFC West. So you got two pretty tough divisions. And the first 4 games, actually the first 3 games are pretty daunting. You start off with Green Bay, then you have Arizona and Seattle. I mean, that's a tough 3 games right there. There's been a lot of changes, and ultimately, I really can't pinpoint what this team can do. I wouldn't be surprised. We did this out the other day. I wouldn't be surprised to see this team go 6-10. I also wouldn't be surprised to see them go 10-6 or 11-5, especially in the North. There's so many variables going on right now. Obviously, Green Bay is going to be a good team. They always are. With Aaron Rodgers, you can never count them out. Minnesota's got head and shoulders better than they were last year. Teddy Bridgewater's going into year 2. They're looking pretty good. Detroit lost a few key players, especially on defense. The defensive line's not the same whatsoever. So, that's going to play a big factor, but realistically, it's kind of crunching it down a little bit. They're going to, in order to have a shot at the playoffs this year, they're really going to have to start 2-2. If not better. The schedule kind of gets a little easier as the season goes on, especially towards that tail end. But like I said, they're just playing. They're playing 2 tough outside divisions, and they're playing in a tough division in their own. So ultimately, right now, I have been going about 7-9. But like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see a 10-6 or 11-5 season, depending on how things mesh, especially in training camp.
Yeah, if I also had to take a guess at it, I think I also see this team going 7-9, 8-8, maybe 9-7. But hey, we're now less than 3 weeks away from training camp in Bourbonnais, and that's all I have for you, Aaron. I really do appreciate your time. I know that the interview lasted a little longer than expected, but definitely had a great time chatting with you, and hopefully we could do this again down the line. Before I let you go, can you tell our listeners where we can check out your work at?
Yeah, you can go to BearReport.com. I'm one of the corresponding writers on there. And you can also go on to my Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. You can see all my tweets, and then I'll tweet out, pieces of articles and links to articles and stuff like that. So I appreciate you having me on, man. Been long overdue.
Hey, you're right about that. Aaron, you're the man, and we'll have to do this again down the line. Take care, all right?
All right, man. Thanks for having me on.
Aaron Leming, writer for BearReport.com, dropping the knowledge on the CS podcast. Some great stuff right there. Again, be sure to check out his work at BearReport.com and follow him on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL. It sounds as if both Aaron and I expect this team to be better than they were last season. I see them going 7-9, 8-8, maybe 9-7. Who knows? Aaron sees it that way as well. He also said that he recently tweeted that he can see this team going 6-10 or even 10-6. It's just so hard to figure out because nobody expected this team to struggle as much as they did last season. And with all the changes that have gone on this offseason, it'll be interesting to see how quickly they'll be able to turn things around. Again, awesome stuff from Aaron Leming from BearReport.com. Up next, I'll be joined by one of the players that he described as one of his sleepers for this upcoming season, David Bass, who's learning a new position at outside linebacker. We'll talk about that as well as his football camp that he has going on July 17th and 18th at St. Joseph's High School in Westchester, Illinois. With that said, here's my interview with Chicago Bears outside linebacker David Bass. Welcome back to the CS podcast presented by the NFL Draft Bible and NUC Sports. Check out the website, nucsports.com. I'm your guys' host, Chris Shanafel, and it's a pleasure to welcome Chicago Bears outside linebacker David Bass back onto the show. David, he's actually hosting a football camp on July 17th and 18th at St. Joseph's High School in Westchester, Illinois from 10 to 2 p.m., presented by the Palacios Foundation and Chicago United Ventures. And David, I appreciate you taking some time today, and I want to hear more about your camp. But first things first, I mean, I introduced you as an outside linebacker. Your first 2 years in the league, you played defensive end in a 4-3 defense. Now you're learning a 3-4 defense under Vic Fangio, one of the league's top defensive coordinators. How's the transition going at the new position in a new defense? How's that coming along?
So far, so good. With myself, not only these first 2 years in the NFL, but since I was 6 years old playing, I've been a 4-3 defensive end. So it's a lot of change for me, but at the same time, I get to show more versatility by standing up, rushing the passer, and also dropping in the coverage. So I like the change for me. It's a lot of things I'm still working on technique fundamental-wise, but, so far, so good.
In your first 2 years in the league, there's always that question about you, David. Is he undersized for the defensive end position? I mean, I believe you're about 6'6", 260 pounds. But every opportunity you had on the field, you certainly made the most of it and made plays. Now, David, this team was held to some high expectations last season. It certainly looked like it was going to be one of the top teams on paper, but it just did not translate on the field. Why do you think that was? I mean, looking back, is there anything specific that you can point and say, man, we cannot allow this, or man, we cannot allow that to happen this year?
Well, as you said, last year didn't go as planned. Was not the season we wanted for ourselves or for the fans' sake. Going into this year, I just say we got to be on the same page, trusting one another and have fun. I think last year we was too tense. And I don't know if it was trust issues or, just the players, coaches, or players and players wasn't on the same page. But that's definitely something we got to go into this year, being on the same page. I think just by us all knowing our responsibility, trusting the man next to us, we'll be all right.
And when the Bears head coaching job was available, looking at the past, it's kind of unusual when they go ahead and hire somebody with head coaching experience. Usually they hire a coordinator, give them their first shot at the head coaching job. But that wasn't the case this time around. They hired John Fox, who in the past was a head coach for the Carolina Panthers and the Denver Broncos, led both teams to a Super Bowl appearance. What was your reaction when you first found out that the team hired John Fox to be the new head coach?
First and foremost, that's above my head. So, there's always rumors. People always talking about, well, they're going to get rid of the coaches, but you never want to see that just as much as you don't want to see a player get cut or released or traded to a new team. So when it happened to the coaches, I thought that was unfortunate, but for us to go sign a whole new entire coaching staff with a background such as they got, I was like, well, this is going to be great for the team, great for the organization, and something we're going to need to do to get this season turned around for the upcoming year. So I look forward to it. I love the coaches, great personalities, also about business. They have a sense of humor and know that, it's all right to have fun, but when it's time to work, it's time to work.
And I know that minicamp recently just wrapped up, and you may have not spent too much time with the new with the new coaching staff. That is, but would you be able to tell us what the biggest difference between John Fox and Mark Trestman, or even the defensive coordinators Vic Fangio and Mel Tucker, or is it still too early to tell?
Still too early to tell. I know, like you said, I've been with the new coaching staff for a short period of time, and I was with Trestman for 2 years. I know they both staffs are passionate about what they do, and they go into every day giving their all and expecting us to give our all. So, I don't know if there's going to be really a difference in coaching styles or how they coach or, the outcome that they want. I think just the season didn't go as we planned.
Chicago Bears outside linebacker David Bass joining the CS podcast presented by the NFL Draft Bible and NUCSports.com. And David, Jared Allen is making a similar transition you're making from defensive end to outside linebacker. Definitely going to be weird seeing Allen line up with his hand not in the dirt. What should we expect from Allen this year at outside linebacker? Do you think we can see a similar type season that Julius Peppers had last year in Green Bay at outside linebacker?
No, that'll be great. Jared Allen, he's like you said, he's been a 4.3 end for his entire career, but as much experience as he got, his talent, his potential, he's a great player. He's going to be great at transition, and not just from an athletic standpoint, but his knowledge as a defensive end or outside linebacker. He knows offenses, he knows personnel, he knows what to look for when they come out. So just by him knowing that and having that much knowledge on the game, I think he'll be successful at whatever position he decides to play.
And looking at what the team did a little bit in the draft, they took defensive tackle out of Florida State, Eddie Goldman, in the second round. Many believe that he could be a key piece in Fangio's 3-4 defense. What are your early impressions on him so far?
He has a bright future. Coming in, great. Like, he's a big guy, athletic guy. And he came in, and, some rookies come in and trying to fit in or seems a little lost from time to time or have a hard time adjusting to the playbook. And you'll see flashes here and there, but I definitely can say he came out and made a name for himself, in the off-season and OTA minicamp, things like that. I think he has a really bright future ahead of him.
And many were pretty surprised that he was there for the Bears to take in the second round. Obviously, Ryan Pace, this was his first draft as a general manager, and it seems like he's impressed many with the young talent that he's bringing in. Now, David, you've been one of the few players that have been highlighted and kind of raved about in minicamp. Another player is Shea McClellan, who made the move to linebacker last year. Some are saying that the change to the 3-4 defense can do wonders for him and that his confidence is at an all-time high since he's been here in Chicago. This is a guy that the Bears spent a first-round pick on a few years ago. Do you think that he could be a player to look out for this year?
Definitely. In his situation, unfortunately, he's in his, I want to say, he's going to his fourth year with his third position change. But, each year he's changed position. He's picked up the whole defense, learned the playbook, and then went out in the field and showed that he's capable of dominating that position. So once again, another athletic, smart, talented guy. So I think he's going to be a player to look out for.
And just a couple more questions for you, David. Then I want to talk about your football camp that you're hosting coming up later on in the month. First things first, any expectations for you this season? Is there any expectations that you may have written down somewhere that you want to hit this year? And what about team expectations? What should we expect from David Bass and the Bears this year?
For the Bears, definitely have a way better season than we had last year. We're going to take one game. Well, my take on it, we're going to take one game at a time and just focus on being 1-0 each week. If we do that, I think everything else will fall into place. Personal expectations and goals, just like I said, week by week, I want to go into training camp taking it day by day. Nothing guaranteed for me being in a position I am. So I want to go out and make a name for myself throughout practice, throughout the preseason, and make the 53-man roster. And then from there, learn my role, play my role, and just be the best player I can be to contribute to the team.
Hey, sounds great. Sounds great. Now, obviously, when you think about the Chicago Bears, you think about defense. Lance Briggs and Charles Tillman, two longtime Chicago Bears, two guys that have both been staples on this defense. They're no longer on the team anymore. Tillman's in Carolina, and Briggs is surprisingly still on the market. How much will these guys be missed, not only for their talent, but their leadership on and off the field?
Oh, man, they're definitely going to be missed in various ways. Even if they didn't play and we just, had them on the team, we can learn so much from them, their experience, the stories they have to tell. And, they're the leaders of the team. They know Bears tradition. So they're there when you bring a lot of guys in, young guys who really don't know the tradition and the history of the Bears and how things are supposed to be. They'll put you right back in the spot and, keep things in line to keep the Bears tradition and the history going. But, I wish him the best. I hope, Peanut go out there and ball in Carolina. I know he will, and I hope Briggs get picked up or, wish him the best if he decides to retire. Either way, both of them are great players, great people to be around.
Absolutely. Definitely two of the greatest players that have really ever put on a Chicago Bears uniform. Now, switching gears here, David, July 17th and 18th, you're hosting a football camp at St. Joseph's High School in Westchester, Illinois from 10 to 2 p.m. It's presented by Palacios Foundation and Chicago United Ventures. Can you tell us more about this event and why you're hosting it?
Well, it's going to be my second time doing a camp this year. Last year we did a camp, a Stop the Violence camp, and it was at Garfield Park. I want to say we had 50 to 60 kids that come out each day. And for me doing the first camp, that was big. It was enough to keep my hands full. And, try to make a difference, teach the kids about life, help them with their techniques and fundamentals about football. Just get them out the house, give them an outlet, let them relate to me and the other people we had out there to say, hey, we're from the same spot you guys from, and show them that everything is possible. We just like you. We're normal people just like you. And with this year, throughout the year, we've been networking, meeting people, different other youth football programs, and we've been inviting them out. So hopefully we're expecting a much bigger turnout. And we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to have a few other teammates that's going to come out and show some love, talk to the kids, work with the kids, and we're just going to have a good time. Is
there a website or anything that we could check out to learn more about the camp?
Yeah, definitely. It's Bears Football Camp 2015.eventbrite.org. That will be on my Twitter, and that will be on my bio on Instagram. Both of them are dbass91 on Twitter and Instagram. So I'll be tweeting that, posting pictures and things so everybody can see that, get the info, registration, and location.
All right, Bears Football Camp 2015.eventbrite.com. Now, David, usually July is the month where most NFL players hold their camps and give back to the communities really all around the world because they have the free time between minicamp and training camp. I got to say, though, it's pretty unfortunate that guys like you don't get the pub for the great things that you guys do off the field. Why is it important for you to give back to the community? Because it's not in your contract. You don't need to do any of this, but you choose to do it. Why is that?
I do it because I know where I came from. I know what position I was in and how, I would have killed to meet a professional athlete, whereas NFL, NBA, MLB, anything like that. We didn't have any guys to reach out to, ask questions, interact with, just so we can see how, they went about things and how they made it possible for them to be in the situation they was in. I would have, killed just to be able to watch a professional athlete train, to, see their diet, things like, everyday schedule, so I can mimic them to give me the best opportunity so I can make it. And this is just me being in the NFL. We have a huge platform. Everybody that's here. And I was telling some of the rookies this. And I was like, there's never going to be a point in your life where you can reach out, communicate with, and change lives that you have now being in a position that we're in. People look up to us. People are going to do what we do, say what we say, train how we train, and that's just our society that we're in. So I want to take this and, make the most that I can, change as many lives as I can, just reach out to people and let them know that everything is possible.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Again, July 17th and 18th at St. Joseph's High School in Westchester, Illinois, 10 to 2 p.m., presented by the Palacios Foundation and Chicago United Ventures. David, I appreciate your time, as always, man. It's always a treat speaking with you. I'm happy to hear that things are going well, and I certainly can't wait to see you, at Bourbonnais in training camp, and, of course, I can't wait to hear how things go with this camp that you're hosting. Do you have anything else for us before I let you go?
No, that's it. Thanks for having me.
All right, as always, it's a pleasure, man. Take care, all right?
All right, you too.
And there he goes, David Bass, learning and adjusting to a new defense and a new position. Many have always thought that he was always undersized as a defensive end and that his best position would be a 3-4 outside linebacker. Well, it's time to see if that's the case. Definitely one of the good guys in the National Football League. He'll be holding a free football camp July 17th and 18th at St. Joseph's High School in Westchester, Illinois from 10 to 2 p.m., presented by the Palacios Foundation and Chicago United Ventures. If you're in the Chicagoland area, go ahead and check it out. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a great time. Anyways, that will do it for this episode of the CS Podcast. Special thanks to Aaron Leming from BearReport.com and Bears outside linebacker David Bass for joining the program. Go ahead and follow them on Twitter at Aaron Leming NFL and at DBass91. While you're at it, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Chris Shanafelt. Be sure to also follow at NFL Draft Bible and at NUC Football as well. As always, this show is presented by the NFL Draft Bible and NUC Sports. Check out the NUC Sports magazine at NFLDraftBible.com and at NUCSports.com. New content every day. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed the show, and until next time, take care.